Welcome to the Relational Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Thompson, joined by my co-host, Austin Hill. Today we're talking about the interplay of anger and love and how that really has a big impact on us and on how we relate to others. So we hope it's helpful, and thanks for listening. Hey, Austin.
Hi, Wes. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Doing well. Today, I want to talk about the interplay of anger and love and how it relates to our personal and relational help with other people. I think when we work with people in addiction, we're always trying to deal with our own struggles, obviously, and also just navigate a particular Christian worldview. And I think one of the questions that's confusing for a lot of people is, especially if you grew up around Christianity and, the Bible is what most Christians would say is their guide to knowing God and to living out their faith. And when we look at the Bible made up of 66 different books, and there's the Old Testament and the New Testament, particularly in the Old Testament, there's a lot of language around anger and God's anger. Particularly, why I bring up the Old Testament is particularly how God responds to us as creation. And then there's a lot of language about love, and obviously many people would point to Jesus and in Jesus's life to talk about love. And I think it'd be interesting to just communicate how those two emotions of anger and love show up in God, and how that might impact the way that we relate with others and ourselves, and obviously how that interplays with addiction. So it might be good to just share a little bit about our own kind of experience and perspective. But the first thing I wanted to do is, there's a Psalm 30 in the Old Testament, verse 5. It says, "For his anger is but for a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning." Again, "For his anger is but for a moment, his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning." Why I like that passage, or at least the why I like it in this moment, is just, I think it really points to the fact that it doesn't deny the reality that, he uses the word weeping, like there's pain, there's hardship in this life, there's struggle. It gives us hope, but joy comes in with the morning. So there's a hopeful future in the midst of the weeping. I like how Crosspoint defines joy as kind of this interplay between gratitude and sadness. Joy comes in the morning. It has a category of anger. Anger is a reality. Oftentimes I think anger is maybe displaced passion, or a sense of things aren't as they should be. And so when we perceive that things aren't as they should be, there's oftentimes the emotion of anger that comes to the surface. But even this idea that, but his favor is for a lifetime, that there is a desire for goodness that God has towards us and towards his creation. And I think that probably has something to do with how we should relate with one another. But I'll start, I think, anger has been an emotion that I think for a long time I felt like, I had to ignore or suppress or pretend like we didn't have it. I think one of the beliefs growing up was probably some version of, anger is not acceptable, even though anger was used to discipline and there was definitely, my parents included, but also just a lot of figures growing up. There was anger. There was Anger, I saw a lot of anger. And so it was confusing because it was like I thought, well, this is something that is wrong, but it's something that I see a lot, and that can be confusing. And then how does love show up with that? So am I lovable? Does God love me? Do the people around me love me? Is this love conditional? Is it transactional? In other words, do I have to earn it? And if I'm not loved, I definitely don't want people to be angry with me. I definitely don't want God's anger and hearing about things like hell. Well, I don't want that. So it was a confusing interplay between love and anger growing up, and I think something that I still wrestle with to this day. So I've already said a lot of words. I could keep going, but I'll kick it to you. Maybe what comes to mind for you, or how has this shown up for you in your journey?
Yeah, it's I think very similar to what you were saying, where like our stories aren't identical, but they rhyme in a lot of ways with how complicated anger and love, um, how they work together or how we experience them. Like it's one of the things that stood out to me while listening to you was there was often, in my experience, this belief that I was not loved if someone was mad at me. Someone could not have those two emotions at the same time and be so. If someone was angry at me, then I couldn't be loved. So in order to be loved or to consistently be loved, I had to make sure I didn't make people angry. And at the same time, I never want anyone to think I'm angry at them because I love them. So I can't express anger. Because expressing anger is wrong because it's not being loving. And what is Jesus? Like, Jesus is love. So, Jesus couldn't be angry. Even though, I grew up reading in, Sunday school that Jesus got ticked in the temple and flipped over tables. And I can remember, not verbatim at all, but just like, well, God's like, Jesus was perfect and we can't do that. We're not him. So like, we can't be angry perfectly. So it's just not even, don't even do it. Just don't be angry. Give it to God. Give it to God. Give it to God. Let go and let God. So if you're ever angry, just give it to God. Which I understand the intent of that statement, but it wasn't very helpful. It could have been helpful for other people, but it wasn't helpful for me all the time.
What did "give it to God" mean to you back then? Because I remember language like that as well, and I never quite knew what that meant.
I think it meant a bunch of different things depending on the situation. Like specifically when someone would express anger, like, oh, you're angry because something's wrong and you're not trusting God enough to take care of it. So I'm not, I don't have the right beliefs. So I need to give whatever it is that's creating this exaggerated emotion to God and trust that he'll take care of it. So it's a powerlessness.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think for me, giving it to God, trusting God with my anger or with those parts of me, looked a lot like ignoring them or denying them. Oh yeah, I don't really feel that way, or I'll just ignore this feeling.
Yeah. Because we can all think of a time in our life when you saw somebody who you cared about who was upset and you're like, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. And they're lying. And they know they're lying. And you just play this game of like, yeah, everything's fine. I mean, what can I be upset about? I am blessed and highly favored and loved by God. What could I possibly be upset about? Which to me makes absolute no sense at all. Like if I think about it, my faith in God is not connected to how I experience a broken world. Like me seeing a broken world and then being upset about it doesn't mean I don't believe in God or that it's even connected to how much I trust in who God is. So there was this, I think, Oh, trying to think. There was a I don't think it was ever stated to me explicitly by leaders in the church that I grew up in, which I really like love and adore. I know the Bible well because of the church I grew up in, but I think the things that I absorbed or kind of just caught in language as like a kid. I didn't go to seminary. I mean, middle schoolers, high schoolers, we just like the language around the Bible of if you are if your emotions get the better of you, or your heart, and it's deceitful. It's like I'm not it in a way. It's whenever I do, or whenever I would let, or if anybody would let those emotions, exaggerated emotions, get out of hand, it was a lack of faith in God. So anytime that would happen, it's like I don't trust God enough, or I should do better. Which in a like part of that's true. I mean, if it's saying like I'm going to try to control something that's not within my control, trying to be others controlling, yeah, that's not a good idea. But it's like there was this like almost unsaid, keep your emotions in check, because that's what a mature person does. And I believe that like being self-controlled is a mark of wisdom. It's a mark of maturity. But how do we get there? That was a tough one. And as a kid growing up in church, just saying trust God more, sometimes that made sense, but a lot of the time, especially when things went sideways, didn't make sense. When bad things happen to good people, you're like, well, I'm just supposed to trust that this is going to work out well. In the moment, it's hard to see that.
No, I relate. It's challenging, for sure. And so I think the first thing we want to say is because, if you look up the word anger, I mean, and how often it shows up in scripture, it's quite a lot. And so I think that many of us, it's hard to talk about the hard emotions. It's hard to talk about the shadow things and the dark things. But the reality is that they not only show up in our lives, but they show up in scripture. And so, and personally, I'm grateful for that, because I think it gives us, the reality is like if we're going to be healthy, I think we have to face these things. And so the question is not whether we should feel anger or not, but rather, what do we do with it when we do feel it?
Yep, because it's going to be felt.
It's going to be felt. And so the answer isn't to deny it, and the answer isn't to ignore it. Because honestly, I think what we don't own, as Rich Blass would say, tends to own us. And so if we just deny the anger, ignore the anger when it's actually there, I think it actually gives it more power over us. Because it's just going to show up somewhere else. It's just going to show up somewhere else. It's the stereotypical example is, angry man comes home from work and starts kicking his dog. Why is he kicking his dog? He's kicking his dog because he's angry. Did his dog do anything? No, but he's not dealing with his anger that's aimed at something else, and so he's going to take it out on somebody in something that isn't even related to it. So, these things are going to come out. It's just a matter of how. And another thing the Bible would say is like being, some version of, I don't know that it says be angry and do not sin, but it's this reality that there will be anger that shows up, and we shouldn't sin in our anger. So it's alluding to this reality that it's not whether or not we feel this emotion, but it's what we do with it when we do feel it. But the reality is, I don't think that we're ever going to deal with anger appropriately if we first don't recognize the fact that love is also at work here. Because without love, like, we are just kind of lost and judged, and there's not, without love, I can't imagine a world without love. But if all you had was anger, I think that's the picture that's one maybe image of hell, is like an existence without love. Because if all you had was anger, it would be very devastating. And so I don't think that we can talk about anger without talking about without an emotion like love, because like you said, what really stood out to me was one of the things you said was like this belief, like I can't be loved by someone who's angry with me. Well, that's going to be a tough belief to live out for a long time.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that this is a crosspoint thought process of anger is a secondary emotion. Like we don't just get angry out of nowhere. We get angry out of it's a reaction to something. And typically it's a reaction to the fear, shame, and guilt around love for a loved one. So it's like I'm ashamed because or I feel guilty for hurting someone I love. Or I'm ashamed because I feel like someone who loves me is pushing me away. Or I'm afraid that I'm going to be ostracized or kicked out of a group of people that I love. And then I respond out of anger. And that anger doesn't always look like someone who has a red face and is violent. Anger could be silence. Anger could be isolating. Anger looks different for different people. But it's a strong, powerful emotion because it comes from such a deep place in each of us. And that's, I really do believe that's why when we see people do things out of anger, it's just like, they weren't thinking straight, because they weren't using all of the tools that God gave us to process these things. When we're just making big decisions out of anger, it's not going to go well. But that doesn't mean that anger actually is a gift, because if we get angry, what that does is it's a feeling that God felt all the time. Read the Old Testament. He was angry all the time. So he felt it. It's what he did with it. So we're going to feel anger. And if I believe that it is a gift from God, so every time we do feel anger, it's God kind of like popping up his hand or tapping us on the shoulder to remind us of who he is and what he's done for us and what he will do for us in the future. And just learning is remembering. So remembering again and again that God is for us.
Yeah, and it's normal to feel anger when things are broken or when things appear to be broken. And so when what you created is suffering, and in God's perspective, it would make sense that there would be some anger when the people we love in our lives are hurting and are going through pain. Anger is a normal emotion, but I think as we talk about how love shows up, when we think about God, how God and love intersect, it's like love is something God feels, but it's also something that God chooses. And as I was thinking about that passage in this today, that came up because we can't merit. In other words, we can't earn God's love, and in that, God chooses to love us. Because if we can't earn it, what that means is that God chose to love us. God chooses us. And because we're children of God, because we're made in God's image, we're created by God, he feels love towards us. So God feels love and he chooses love towards us, which is, I think, really significant. That love isn't just an intellectual idea, which I think is something we often struggle with. It's like I can have an idea about love, but to realize that God just doesn't have just an idea of love about us. He feels love towards us as his children, as any good father would. And I think God's a better father than us. So if we feel love towards our kids, imagine that. And then imagine God feeling love in a perfect kind of way. So he feels love towards us. He chooses us. He chooses to love us. And I think the hard part for us in that, and we've already alluded to it, is the reality that so much of our view of love is transactional and conditional. So it makes sense that we struggle to relate to God in that same way. Meaning, I've got to earn it. If I do this for you, you do this for me. It's transactional. And I think often because we know we don't measure up, like you said earlier, this results in fear, shame, and guilt. And so that results in us posturing, hiding, pretending, rather than showing up as we are before God, right? As his kids that are dearly loved and accepted by him. And so I think where this relates to the podcast is, well, we're all trying to be relationally healthy, but often in our guilt, shame, and fear, because we feel like we're not measuring up, we disassociate by means of addiction. We find ways to not feel these things or to hide, right? To pretend. And an addiction is a means that helps us do that for a time until it doesn't work, right? Until it doesn't work. And so healing is us waking up to who we are and who God is, and that we're loved always. And so I think there's numerous ways that this allows us to relate to him, to ourselves, to others better as a result. But it's really important first that we don't just talk about anger, but we talk about love. Because if we only talk about anger, especially God's anger towards sin and God's anger towards us, I think that's only going to end in, again, us trying to hide. Where if we know that God's anger isn't because there's something wrong with us inherently. God made us and he called it very good. It's that when things aren't as they should be, it produces anger in God because God wants good for us. And so that anger is actually the result of a deep, deep love that God has towards us. And if we lose sight of that, we miss the whole point, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to, it's one of those, it's really hard to wrap your mind around because we don't see very good examples of what like a restorative anger looks like, you know, because we think like especially like we'll look at movies or some popular like a popular movie or show. It's like we love seeing someone get vengeance on somebody, taking out the bad guy, making things better through violence, and they just like lose their cool and like make things right that way. And like we celebrate that often. It's like, oh, they did the thing that I wish I could do to the people I was angry at with no consequences. Then it's just like, well, shouldn't I feel angry? Kind of like how God does things out of a love for us when he sees things wrong or in injustice. Like if somebody hurts somebody, we should feel angry about that because we want the other person to be okay. And it's a hard line to walk. Because if you want to be a loving person like Jesus, you also have to accept the fact that he was also angry at things. And do we think that anger was right? And do we think that it was pointed towards something that was healthy, towards redeeming all things back to himself being Jesus, back to the way they ought to be, that are just?
Well, like when your kids let's just make it really black and white. We'll just call it wrong. When your kids do the wrong thing, does it make you angry?
Yeah, in certain instances, yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. Does it make you feel any less love towards them?
No, but I know it's not experienced that way.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not saying we're like God, but I think that we image God in that way. But I think God does that in a perfect way. So God's anger does not mean God doesn't love us. It's actually because of his anger that it shows that he loves us.
Yeah.
I believe that is the consistent theme of how God's love and anger interplay in the Bible.
Or like another example is like when we hear that a good friend did something or relapsed or did something off the wall, you're like, your response is like, what? Why did they do that? And you like feel this like frustration towards them and their actions. But it's making the difference clear between I'm angry at the behavior, not who you are as a person. And I'm angry at you because it's not in line with the character that I know you have. So it's not even, so like experience, like I think if we made it where someone is mad at you, we have to have the discipline to say like, they're angry at my action, not at my character. I still have value to them. And that takes a lot of discipline to be like, and that's, I think, where somebody does mess up and they don't want to come and admit it because they don't want to face what the possible consequences could be. Because a loving person holds people accountable, and that means that there are often consequences. But that doesn't change the love; it changes the relationship and how, like, the amount of connection you can have. But that's a consequence. That doesn't mean that the love for the person has changed. Because you can love, like, if we think about just our family members, I love my mom, my wife, my daughters, my brothers, my friends. It's all love. It's all different, though. We have different relationships. That doesn't mean I don't feel like, because I don't have the same love for my friends that I have for my daughters, it doesn't mean that I don't love my daughters. So it's being able to look at that in a pragmatic way and slowing down enough to not get controlled by your emotions, but to be to control them, to be self-controlled.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, I think just to wrap this up, it's good to just remember that to deny how we feel isn't going to end well, but also to be too reactive and responsive in how we feel isn't good. I think we have to slow down, and we have to learn to talk about it, and be honest about it, but just try to do it in a slower pace. But just anyone hearing this, I think the first thing is like, the thing I would really want people to hear is that they're loved by God, and that God's first reaction to us is that of love. That God loves us, is pursuing us, cares about us. Because if we forget that, then we're not, like, that's the first movement of maturity is to be able to tolerate that, is to be able to accept that. Because if we aren't able to accept God's love, then how we relate to God and others is going to be very distorted. And so it's actually accepting the love of God that gives us the fuel to change and become healthier in the first place. And that may sound foreign to some, but I believe it wholeheartedly. So I think the first thing to chew on in this moment is, you may be angry at yourself, you may be angry at God, you may be angry at others. But to first be able to sit and maybe think about the fact that you're loved by God first. That no matter how you feel or what's going on in your life, and I'm not saying deny any of that or ignore any of that, but the first thing to just chew on is, man, you're loved. You're loved by God, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. And that orientation is the genesis point, it's the beginning of all of our development moving forward. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Relational Recovery Podcast. We'll be back soon with a new conversation. We'll see you then.